The night air in Chicago carried a warning that Olivia Jenkins couldn't decipher, but her daughter Penny somehow could. Their evening at Tavola d'Oro started as a rare splurge, the prestigious Italian restaurant far beyond what a single mom waitressing across town could afford. Olivia straightened her daughter's small cardigan as they waited by the hostess stand, counting the minutes until her friend Mia's shift ended, and they could enjoy the promised leftover tiramisu. Even at 7, Penny showed unusual poise, her eyes tracking movements throughout the grand dining room. Overhead chandeliers cast golden light across marble floors and burgundy booths, where Chicago's elite dined alongside tourists seeking authentic Italian cuisine. At the center table sat a man whose presence commanded attention, his tailored suit and watchful eyes marking him as someone accustomed to power. Penny tugged at her mother's sleeve suddenly, her small face scrunched in concentration as she listened to something beyond Olivia's comprehension. The child's extraordinary gift had appeared when she was 4, the ability to understand any language after hearing just a few sentences, a talent that fascinated and frightened Olivia. Behind the ornate bar, 2 men in business attire conversed quietly in what Olivia vaguely recognized as Russian, their attention fixed on the central table where the imposing man sat alone. Penny's grip tightened, her eyes widening with understanding that her mother couldn't share. "Mommy, those men are saying bad things," Penny whispered, her voice barely audible as she pressed against Olivia's side. "They put something in the food for that man. They said it would make his heart stop before dessert." Olivia felt ice slide down her spine as she glanced between the Russians and the target, a man whose dangerous aura was apparent even from across the room. With only $18 to last until payday, and a lifetime of avoiding trouble, she knew the sensible choice was to leave immediately. The waiter approached the central table, carrying a steaming plate of what appeared to be handmade ravioli with truffles, the restaurant's signature dish. Penny's small body tensed, her unusual gift becoming a terrible burden as she alone understood the danger unfolding. "We have to tell him," Penny insisted, breaking free of Olivia's grasp before she could be stopped. The child darted between tables with determined purpose, ignoring her mother's desperate whisper to return. Olivia lunged after her daughter, heart pounding as Penny reached the man's table just as the waiter set down the poisoned dish. The restaurant's ambient noise seemed to fade as the small girl touched the sleeve of Chicago's most dangerous mafia boss. Michael Ferraro looked down at the tiny hand on his expensive suit with narrowed eyes, his bodyguards tensing nearby. Penny's voice came out clear and direct despite her size, the words tumbling out before Olivia could reach them. "Don't eat the pasta. The men at the bar put something in it to make you die," Penny announced, pointing toward the Russians who were now watching with poorly concealed alarm. "They were talking in Russian, but I understand what they said." Olivia reached her daughter at last, her face flushed with embarrassment and fear as she met Michael's calculating gaze. His expression remained unreadable, but his hand moved away from the silverware he'd been about to pick up. "I'm so sorry, sir. My daughter has an active imagination," Olivia stammered, fighting to keep her voice steady as she felt the weight of multiple stares from around the restaurant. The Russians were already standing, their hands moving subtly toward inner pockets. Michael Ferraro's eyes never left Olivia's face as he quietly instructed his bodyguard to taste the pasta, the command barely audible. The large man hesitated only briefly before taking a small bite, his loyalty greater than his self-preservation. 30 seconds of tense silence passed before the bodyguard's face contorted in pain, his hand clutching at his throat as he collapsed to one knee. Michael Ferraro's expression hardened into something terrible as he rose smoothly to his feet, his movements deceptively calm. "Both of you, come with me now," he commanded Olivia and Penny, his voice brooking no argument as chaos erupted throughout the restaurant. The Russians were already moving toward the exit, hands no longer concealed but gripping weapons. Olivia clutched Penny to her side, torn between the danger approaching from the bar and the known threat of Michael Ferraro, a man whose criminal empire ruled Chicago's West Side. Her daughter's gift had just made them witnesses to an assassination attempt against the most dangerous man in the city. "Back door," Michael directed, gripping Olivia's elbow firmly as he guided them through the kitchen, his other hand holding a phone to his ear with rapid-fire instructions. The kitchen staff flattened themselves against stainless steel counters, eyes averted from the mafia boss in their midst. A sleek black SUV waited in the alley, its engine running as Michael ushered them inside before sliding in beside them. Olivia pulled Penny onto her lap, her arms wrapped protectively around her daughter, as the vehicle accelerated into Chicago's evening traffic. "How did she know?" Michael demanded once they were moving, His attention focused on Penny with an intensity that made Olivia's protective instincts flare. No one at that bar was speaking English. I would have noticed. Penny answered before Olivia could formulate a response, her voice small but certain in the tense confines of the vehicle. I can understand all languages after I hear them a little bit. It's been that way since I was 4. Michael's skeptical expression softened marginally as he studied the child, recognition dawning that he owed his life to her unusual ability. He directed his driver toward Chicago's Gold Coast with a curt instruction, his attention never leaving the unlikely pair who had disrupted an otherwise ordinary assassination. The men said the poison was special, made in Moscow to leave no trace. Penny continued, her recall disturbingly precise for a 7-year-old. They said someone named Nikolai paid them a lot of money to make sure you never left that restaurant. Olivia felt the blood drain from her face as her daughter casually revealed intelligence that could get them both killed. Michael's features remained composed, but his knuckles whitened where he gripped his phone, the only visible sign of his rage. "We don't want any part of this," Olivia stated firmly, finding her voice at last as the gravity of their situation became clear. "Just drop us off at the next corner, and we'll forget everything we saw tonight." Michael Ferraro's laugh held no humor as he tucked his phone away, his eyes meeting Olivia's with something approaching respect. "2 Russian hitmen just watched your daughter save my life. Forgetting isn't an option anymore." The SUV turned onto Lakeshore Drive, the glittering lights of downtown Chicago reflecting off the dark water beyond. Penny had fallen silent, her small body growing heavy with exhaustion against Olivia's chest as the adrenaline began to fade. Michael studied them both, his decision apparently made as he gave the driver a new address. "You're coming to my penthouse until I sort this out. You'll be safer there than anywhere else in Chicago tonight." Olivia wanted to protest, but the reality of their situation silenced her objections. They were already involved in something far beyond her experience, with no clear path back to the simple life they'd been living just an hour earlier. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of one of Chicago's most exclusive high-rises, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the illuminated city and lake beyond. Olivia stood awkwardly in the marble foyer, Penny half asleep against her shoulder as Michael conferred with his security team. "There's a guest room down the hall where your daughter can rest," Michael informed her. His tone softened slightly as he observed Penny's drooping eyelids. "We need to talk, and she's had enough excitement for one night." Olivia followed his direction warily, taking in the minimalist luxury of the apartment, all clean lines and expensive materials that spoke of wealth without ostentation. The guest room contained a king-sized bed, where Penny immediately curled into a ball, asleep almost before Olivia pulled the blanket over her. Back in the living room, Michael had shed his suit jacket and stood by the window, a tumbler of amber liquid in one hand as he surveyed his domain below. He turned as Olivia approached, offering her a drink that she declined with a shake of her head. "My security team confirmed that the men from the restaurant were contract killers working for the Bratva, Russian mafia looking to expand their territory," Michael explained, watching her reaction carefully. "I need to know exactly what your daughter heard them say." Olivia sank onto the edge of a leather sofa, her waitress uniform incongruous against the expensive furniture. "Penny doesn't lie about what she hears. If she told you they mentioned someone named Nikolai, then that's what they said." Michael nodded slowly, accepting her assessment without further questioning. "What she did tonight saved my life, which means I'm in her debt, a position I rarely find myself in," he acknowledged, a hint of reluctant admiration coloring his words. "We don't want your debt or your gratitude," Olivia responded firmly, fighting to maintain her composure in the face of his intimidating presence. "We want our normal life back, one that doesn't involve assassins or mafia bosses." A small smile touched Michael's lips as he regarded her defiance with something approaching appreciation. "Normal ended the moment your daughter identified Russian hitmen in a public restaurant," he stated bluntly, setting his glass down on a marble side table. Olivia felt the truth of his words settle like a weight on her shoulders, the reality of their situation impossible to deny. Their modest apartment suddenly seemed terribly vulnerable, their routines exposed to dangers she hadn't considered until tonight. "I have people looking into the Russians' connections in Chicago," Michael continued, his tone shifting to businesslike efficiency. "Until we know who sent them and how many others might be looking for you both, you'll stay here under my protection." The offer, or command, hung between them, Michael's expression making it clear he expected no argument. Olivia thought of their apartment with its flimsy locks and fire escape accessible windows, knowing she had no real alternative to ensure Penny's safety. 1 week, she negotiated, summoning determination she didn't entirely feel. "We'll stay for 1 week while you sort this out, And then we go back to our lives with new identities if necessary. Michael studied her with renewed interest, as though seeing beyond the waitress uniform to the steel beneath. 1 week, he agreed with a slight nod, extending his hand to seal their arrangement like a business deal rather than the life-altering pact it represented. Olivia hesitated briefly before accepting his handshake, his palm warm and surprisingly calloused against hers. A strange current passed between them at the contact, something neither acknowledged but both distinctly felt, the first tenuous thread of connection forming between two people from entirely different worlds. "I should check on Penny," Olivia murmured, withdrawing her hand and stepping back from the unexpected intensity of the moment. Michael nodded his assent, turning back to the window as she retreated down the hallway, both of them aware that something fundamental had shifted in the space of a single evening. Morning light filtered through automated blinds, waking Olivia from a fitful sleep on the guest room's chaise lounge, where she'd kept watch over Penny. The events of the previous night felt surreal, until she recognized the luxurious surroundings of Michael Ferraro's penthouse. Penny stirred beneath silk sheets, her small face peaceful despite the danger that had enveloped them. Olivia checked her phone to find 17 missed calls from her landlord and supervisor, their normal life already unraveling in their absence. A soft knock at the door revealed not Michael, but a woman in a tailored suit who introduced herself simply as Diana, head of security. "Mr. Ferraro had to attend to urgent business, but requested you both join him for lunch at noon," she stated, her professional demeanor betraying nothing of her thoughts about the unusual guests. Olivia discovered the closet stocked with new clothing in her and Penny's sizes, a thoughtfulness that was both considerate and unsettling in its implication that Michael had extensive resources at his immediate disposal. The expensive jeans and cashmere sweater fit perfectly, raising questions about how he'd obtained her measurements overnight. Diana escorted them to a waiting town car at precisely 11:45, refusing to divulge their destination despite Olivia's increasingly frustrated questions. Penny, by contrast, seemed entirely at ease, watching Chicago's landscape transform from glittering skyscrapers to industrial zones with curious eyes. The car eventually stopped at an unassuming brick building with blacked-out windows, the only indication of its significance being the 4 men standing guard outside. Inside, Olivia found not a mafia headquarters, but an elegant private restaurant with a single occupied table where Michael waited. "The Russians made another attempt last night," Michael informed them without preamble once they were seated, his expression grim as he looked between mother and daughter. "They firebombed your apartment building at 3 a.m. There's nothing left of your home." Olivia sank into her chair, the devastating news stealing her breath as images of their modest apartment, with Penny's carefully arranged stuffed animals, and Olivia's hard-earned furniture, consumed by flames filled her mind. Penny slipped her small hand into her mother's, offering comfort despite her own loss. "Fortunately, your neighbors evacuated safely," Michael continued, softening his tone slightly at Olivia's visible distress. "I've arranged for their temporary housing and replacement of essentials. It was the least I could do considering you were targeted because of me." His unexpected generosity toward strangers momentarily silenced Olivia's rising panic, revealing a dimension to the mafia boss she hadn't anticipated. Michael Ferraro protected his own interests, certainly, but perhaps his code extended beyond mere self-preservation. "My security team intercepted 2 of the Russians during their escape," Michael explained, his voice returning to its usual controlled cadence. "Before they were dealt with, they confirmed that the Sokolov family has put a contract on both of you as witnesses." The clinical way he referenced the likely deaths of the Russians sent a chill through Olivia, a stark reminder that the man offering protection was equally comfortable ordering executions. She pulled Penny closer to her side, questioning once again whether they were safer with or without Michael's intervention. "I need Penny to listen to something," Michael continued, nodding to Diana, who placed a laptop on the table and played an audio recording of men speaking in rapid Russian. "Can you tell me what they're saying, little one?" Penny listened intently, her extraordinary gift activating as she absorbed the foreign language. "They're talking about moving something important from a place called Warehouse 17 tonight because it's not safe there anymore," she translated with childlike directness. "They mentioned someone named Belov who's coming from New York to oversee everything." Michael's eyes widened slightly, the only indication of his surprise at the accuracy of her translation and the significance of the intelligence. He exchanged a meaningful look with Diana, who immediately stepped away to make a call. "You've just confirmed what my own translators determined," Michael told Penny with genuine admiration, and provided us with the opportunity to end this threat before it escalates further. The safe house in suburban Chicago bore little resemblance to either Olivia's modest apartment or Michael's luxury penthouse, a deliberate neutrality that somehow emphasized the temporary nature of their situation. Located on a quiet cul-de-sac with an attached garage that allowed them to enter unseen, the house projected an ordinary family life they were merely pretending to inhabit. Penny adapted to their new circumstances with the resilience of childhood, exploring the two-story home with curious interest, while Olivia struggled to process the seismic shifts in their reality. The knowledge that strangers had destroyed their home in an attempt to kill them had shattered her sense of security more thoroughly than any lock or window ever could. "The perimeter is secure and monitored 24/7, Michael explained, as he showed them the security features integrated throughout the house. The panic room behind the kitchen pantry has separate communication systems and enough supplies for 3 days if necessary." Olivia watched him move through the house with controlled efficiency, noting how his dangerous edge remained even in this domestic setting, like a predator temporarily at rest, but never truly relaxed. His phone rang constantly with business that required immediate attention, offering brief glimpses into the empire he commanded beyond these walls. "Why go to all this trouble for us?" Olivia finally asked that evening after Penny had fallen asleep in her new bedroom, surrounded by hastily purchased toys. "You could have simply disappeared us. That would have been easier than this elaborate protection." Michael considered her question with unexpected seriousness, his usual mask of control slipping to reveal something more complex beneath. "I've built my organization on specific principles, one being that debts are always paid," he replied, his voice lower than usual. "Your daughter saved my life. Ensuring your safety is non-negotiable." The simple dinner they shared in the safe house kitchen created an odd domesticity neither had anticipated. Pasta carbonara prepared by Michael himself, who revealed surprising culinary skills developed during childhood visits to his grandmother's home in Sicily. The contrast between this intimate scene and the violence that had brought them together created a dissonance Olivia couldn't reconcile. "You run a criminal empire but cook pasta from scratch," Olivia observed, the incongruity of it striking her as they cleared dishes together in an unexpectedly normal routine. "How do you reconcile those parts of yourself?" Michael's hand stilled momentarily at her direct question, unused to being challenged by anyone outside his organization. "The world isn't divided into good people and criminals, Olivia," he responded, using her name for the first time since they'd met. "We all contain multitudes and contradictions." The ringing of his secure phone interrupted what might have become a deeper conversation, Michael's expression immediately shifting back to business as he received information about the planned interception at Warehouse 17. His responses were clipped and precise, reminding Olivia sharply of the danger that remained very real beyond their temporary sanctuary. "I have to go," Michael announced after ending the call, already transforming from the man who cooked pasta into the mafia boss with lives depending on his decisions. "Diana and the security team will remain outside. Do not open the door for anyone but me, regardless of identification they present." The sudden shift left Olivia oddly bereft, watching as he checked his weapon with practiced efficiency before securing it in his shoulder holster. The brief glimpse of a different Michael made his return to violence all the more jarring, like watching someone don a familiar costume. "This operation should eliminate the immediate threat to you both," Michael explained, his voice once again carrying the authority that brooked no argument. "Once the Sokolov faction is neutralized, we can discuss more permanent arrangements for your safety." Olivia stood in the doorway as he prepared to leave, struck by the realization that despite everything, she feared for his safety in the coming confrontation. The unexpected concern confused her. This man represented everything she had spent her life avoiding, yet in the space of 48 hours, he had become their protector. "Be careful," she said simply, the words surprising them both with their sincerity. Michael paused, something unreadable passing through his eyes, before he nodded once and disappeared into the Chicago night, leaving Olivia alone with her sleeping daughter and a house full of unfamiliar shadows. The quiet of the safe house pressed in on Olivia as hours passed without word from Michael or his team. She checked on Penny repeatedly, finding comfort in her daughter's peaceful sleep, untouched by the adult fears that kept Olivia moving restlessly from window to window. The security monitors in the small office showed the perimeter guards at their posts, their presence both reassuring and a stark reminder of the danger that had engulfed them. Olivia found herself studying their positions, mentally calculating escape routes should the protection fail, a survivalist instinct she hadn't known she possessed. At 2:17 a.m., The security system chimed softly to announce Michael's return, cameras showing his solitary figure approaching the front door. Olivia met him in the foyer, immediately noticing the bruise forming along his jawline and the careful way he held his left side, evidence of violence he'd clearly tried to conceal. "It's handled," he stated simply, fatigue evident in the slight slump of his normally perfect posture. "The Sokolov lieutenant and his team have been neutralized, and their Chicago operation dismantled before it could fully establish itself." Olivia led him to the kitchen without comment, finding first aid supplies in a drawer and gesturing for him to sit at the island counter. Michael complied with uncharacteristic docility, allowing her to clean the cut above his eyebrow while neither acknowledged the strange intimacy of the moment. "Your daughter's intelligence about Belov proved accurate," Michael continued as Olivia worked, focusing on business rather than the gentle pressure of her fingers against his skin. "We intercepted communications indicating he was planning to establish a permanent foothold in Chicago, starting with eliminating competing organizations, mine included." Olivia applied butterfly bandages to the cut with practiced efficiency, learned from years of treating Penny's childhood scrapes. "So we were just collateral damage in a larger power struggle between criminal enterprises," she observed, her tone neutral despite the bitterness underlying the words. Michael caught her wrist gently as she finished, forcing her to meet his gaze directly. "You were never just anything, Olivia," he said quietly, something unguarded in his expression that made her breath catch. "Not to me. Not from the moment your daughter saved my life." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibilities neither was prepared to acknowledge, until Olivia carefully withdrew her hand and stepped back to create necessary distance. Michael allowed the retreat, awareness of boundaries restored between them as quickly as it had momentarily dissolved. "While we've eliminated the immediate threat, the situation has revealed a more complex problem," Michael continued, professional once more, as he accepted the ice pack Olivia offered for his bruised jaw. "The Sokolov family's interest in Chicago indicates a larger power struggle within the Russian organizations that won't end with tonight's operation." Olivia sank onto a stool across from him, the weight of his words settling heavily, as she realized their ordeal wasn't nearing conclusion, but merely entering a new phase. "What does that mean for us?" she asked directly, too exhausted for anything but blunt questions. Michael considered her for a long moment, weighing options and outcomes with the strategic thinking that had elevated him to his current position. "It means you can't return to your previous life," he finally stated, the truth harsh but necessary. "The Sokolovs will eventually send others. They can't afford to appear weak by leaving a contract unfulfilled." The reality Olivia had been avoiding crashed down around her. Their modest apartment, her waitressing job, Penny's school, the careful life she'd constructed as a single mother, all of it irrevocably lost because of a random encounter with organized crime. Tears threatened for the first time since their ordeal began, a luxury she hadn't allowed herself until now. "I can offer you new identities, relocation to any city of your choosing, and financial security for life," Michael continued, his voice softening as he observed her struggle to maintain composure. "You would never have to worry about money again, and Penny would have educational opportunities beyond anything you could provide on a waitress's salary." The offer hung between them, generous, practical, and representing a clean break that would separate them permanently. Olivia should have felt relief at the prospect of escaping both the Russians and Michael's dangerous world, yet something unexpected made her hesitate. "And you?" she asked, the question emerging before she could examine it too closely. "What happens to you after we disappear with new names and faces?" Surprise flickered across Michael's features before his customary control reasserted itself. "I continue as I always have," he replied with careful neutrality, though something in his eyes suggested the answer wasn't as simple as the words implied. "Chicago is my city. I won't be driven from it by Russian interlopers or anyone else." Days at the safe house fell into an unexpected rhythm as April brought warmer temperatures to Chicago, the temporary arrangement stretching beyond its original timeline. Michael visited daily, ostensibly to provide updates on security matters, but increasingly staying for dinner and evening conversations after Penny went to bed. Penny thrived despite their circumstances, her natural resilience allowing her to adapt to homeschooling conducted by a retired teacher on Michael's payroll. Her gift with languages became a source of fascination rather than fear, as Michael brought recordings in various dialects for her to translate, turning her unusual ability into a game rather than a burden. The first time Penny called him Mr. Mike instead of Mr. Ferraro, something shifted in Michael's usually guarded expression, a softening around the eyes that revealed depths of emotion Olivia hadn't believed him capable of. She caught him watching them sometimes with an unreadable look that disappeared the moment he noticed her observation. Spring flowers bloomed in the safe house garden where Penny planted sunflower seeds under Michael's surprisingly patient guidance, his dangerous hands gentle as they demonstrated how to pat soil over tiny kernels. Olivia observed from the kitchen window, conflicted by the domesticity of a scene involving one of Chicago's most feared men. "He's not what I expected," Olivia admitted to Diana during one of their now regular coffee conversations, the female security chief having become something of a confidant in their isolated existence. "There's more to him than the reputation suggests." Diana's knowing smile held years of loyalty and observation condensed into a simple expression. "Michael built his empire by being underestimated," she replied, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. "But the man teaching your daughter about photosynthesis is closer to his true self than most people ever get to see." The boundaries between protection and something deeper blurred further when Michael arrived unexpectedly one evening, with a violin case that contained not weapons but an actual instrument. Penny's delight at receiving lessons from someone who played with surprising skill created yet another connection in their increasingly intertwined lives. "My mother insisted on lessons from age 6, Michael explained later that night, as they shared wine on the patio, stars visible above the secure perimeter of their temporary home. Music was her requirement. Business was my father's. I learned to excel at both, but found more joy in one than the other." Then Olivia studied him in the soft landscape lighting, seeing glimpses of the boy he must have been before family obligations and Chicago's underworld shaped him into the man beside her. "You could have chosen differently," she suggested, the wine making her bolder than usual. "You had options, many don't." Michael's laugh carried no humor as he refilled their glasses, the expensive vintage a small luxury in their strange limbo existence. "Family legacy isn't something you choose or reject in my world," he responded, years of accepted truth in his tone. "It's what you're born into and die with. The only variables are how well you carry it, and who benefits from your power." A comfortable silence settled between them, filled with unspoken possibilities neither was ready to voice. The protection that had initially been obligation had evolved into something neither had anticipated, a connection forming despite the circumstances that should have made it impossible. "Penny asked me today if we were staying here forever," Olivia finally said, the question that had been weighing on her mind finding voice in the peaceful evening air. "I didn't know how to answer her. I'm not sure what forever looks like anymore." Michael set his glass down, turning to face her directly with unusual openness in his expression. "What do you want it to look like?" he asked, the question simple yet loaded with implications neither had been willing to address directly until now. Before Olivia could formulate a response, Michael's phone shattered the moment with its insistent ring, security protocols demanding immediate attention. His expression closed off as he answered, business and danger reclaiming him in an instant, as he received information that transformed his posture from relaxed to alert. "The Russians have made contact with someone inside my organization," he informed her after ending the call, all traces of the violinist and gardener subsumed by the mafia boss. "We have a traitor providing information about our security protocols." Dawn broke over the safe house with tense energy, as Michael's security team doubled their presence, the betrayal within his organization creating new vulnerabilities none had anticipated. Olivia watched them sweep the house for surveillance devices, their methodical process highlighting the precarious nature of their safety. "We're moving you both to a different location tonight," Michael informed Olivia, as they spoke in hushed tones in the kitchen, away from Penny's curious ears. "The compromise means this address may have been revealed to Sokolov's people." Diana arrived with dossiers on 3 suspects, trusted lieutenants within Michael's organization with access to the security protocols for the safe house. The evidence was circumstantial but concerning. Unusual financial transactions, unexplained absences, and communications patterns that indicated possible external contact. "Gregory has been with me 15 years, Michael said, disbelief coloring his voice as he reviewed the most damning file, loyalty warring with evidence that couldn't be dismissed. "His daughter's medical bills, the specialized treatments in Switzerland that my organization paid for. I thought that debt was settled." Olivia studied the photographs of the 3 men, struck by how ordinary they appeared, despite their criminal connections. "People betray those they love for different reasons," she observed quietly, thinking of her own experiences with Penny's father, who had abandoned them before his daughter's first birthday. "Money is just one motivation." Michael's eyes met hers with sharp understanding, recognizing that her insight came from personal experience he hadn't yet been privy to. The moment of connection broke when Diana returned with updated intelligence that confirmed their worst fears. A planned raid on the safe house scheduled for midnight. "We have 9 hours to set a trap," Michael declared, his strategic mind already formulating counterplans as he contacted his most trusted team members. "We'll move Penny to the secondary location immediately, but I need you to help us identify the traitor, Olivia." Her protest died unspoken as Michael explained his plan, using her as visible bait while secretly relocating. Penny would draw out both the internal betrayer and the Russian assassins, allowing them to eliminate all threats simultaneously. The risk was calculated but significant, requiring Olivia's willing participation in a dangerous deception. "Why would you trust me with something this important?" Olivia questioned, genuinely bewildered by the faith he placed in someone who had stumbled into his life by chance. "I have no training, no experience with any of this." Michael's answer was immediate and certain, his confidence in her a tangible force between them. "Because you've shown more loyalty in weeks than some have demonstrated in years," he responded, the simple truth of it humbling in its directness. "And because Penny needs you to survive this, which means failure isn't an option." The plan unfolded with precise timing. Penny secretly evacuated through an underground tunnel connecting the safe house to a neighboring property, while Olivia remained visible in windows and security cameras, maintaining the illusion that both remained inside. Michael stationed himself in the command center established in the basement, monitoring feeds from every angle of the property. "Movement at the perimeter," Diana reported at 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes ahead of the expected timeline. 4-man team approaching from the eastern boundary, using the blind spot in the camera coverage that only someone with internal knowledge could identify. Michael's expression hardened into something terrible, as video confirmation revealed Gregory among the approaching team, his betrayal now irrefutable, as he guided Russian operatives toward the house that sheltered the woman and child Michael had sworn to protect. The personal nature of the betrayal seemed to affect him more deeply than the professional implications. "Let them breach the outer perimeter," Michael instructed his team through secured communications, the trap now set with precision. "We need confirmation of all parties involved before we engage." Olivia watched the monitors with her heart pounding painfully against her ribs, the reality of armed men approaching with intent to kill far more terrifying than any abstract understanding had prepared her for. The night vision feed showed them moving with military precision toward the house she stood within, their weapons ready as they followed Gregory's confident lead. "Now," Michael commanded, as the intruders reached the predetermined position, and suddenly the dark yard erupted with precisely targeted gunfire from Michael's concealed security team. The Russians fell immediately, but Gregory was deliberately left untouched, as tactical team members emerged from hiding to surround him. Michael approached his former lieutenant with cold fury contained behind a mask of control, the betrayal clearly cutting deeper than he would allow himself to show. 15 years, Gregory," he stated, his voice carrying in the sudden silence of the night. 15 years of loyalty thrown away, and for what? Gregory's defiance crumbled in the face of capture, his explanation spilling forth in desperate justification. "They found Katerina in Switzerland, threatened to kill her unless I helped them," he confessed, referring to his daughter. "I had no choice, Michael. Family comes first. You taught me that yourself." Sunrise painted Chicago's skyline in shades of gold and pink as Michael's private jet waited on the tarmac, its engines idling in preparation for immediate departure. Penny slept peacefully across 2 seats, exhausted from the midnight evacuation and subsequent reunion with her mother at the secondary safe location. Gregory's cooperation has identified the remaining Sokolov contacts in 3 cities, Michael explained as they stood slightly apart from his security team, the aftermath of the night's operation still evident in the heightened alertness of everyone involved. "With coordinated raids happening simultaneously, the threat to you both will be permanently eliminated by noon." Olivia watched Penny's gentle breathing, the profound relief of their survival, tempered by uncertainty about what came next. "So this is where we disappear," she said quietly, the new identities and distant relocation previously discussed now apparently imminent with the plane waiting to take them away. Michael's hesitation was barely perceptible, a fractional pause that most would miss, but that Olivia had learned to recognize during their weeks together. "That depends entirely on what you want," he replied, carefully maintaining neutral tones despite the weight of the conversation. "The jet will take you anywhere in the world, or nowhere at all." Confusion flickered across Olivia's face at his cryptic statement, until understanding dawned slowly, the implication of his words opening possibilities she hadn't allowed herself to consider. "Are you suggesting we could stay in Chicago?" she asked, needing absolute clarity before allowing hope to take root. "I'm suggesting that threat elimination creates options," Michael responded, his usually confident demeanor showing rare uncertainty as he ventured into unfamiliar emotional territory, including the possibility of building something neither of us anticipated when this began. The weeks of shared meals, evening conversations, Penny's violin lessons, and moments of unexpected connection flashed through Olivia's mind, a foundation laid amid danger that somehow felt more solid than relationships formed under normal circumstances. The man standing before her was still Michael Ferraro, with all the complications that entailed, yet undeniably different from the mafia boss she'd initially feared. "My organization is evolving," Michael continued when she remained silent, his words carefully chosen. "The legitimate businesses now represent 70% of our holdings: restaurants, real estate, shipping, with plans to phase out the remaining operations over the next 2 years. Olivia recognized the statement for what it was: not just business information, but a promise of transformation, a path forward that could potentially bridge their disparate worlds. "You're talking about leaving behind the life you were born into," she observed, the magnitude of such a change not lost on her. Michael's smile held a hint of his characteristic confidence returning, as he found firmer ground in her continued engagement rather than immediate rejection. "I'm talking about choosing a different legacy, one not dictated by my father's choices or family history," he clarified, conviction evident in every word. Dawn fully broke over the airfield, symbolically appropriate as they stood at the threshold of decisions that would reshape their futures. "Penny has flourished despite everything," Olivia acknowledged, glancing again at her sleeping daughter. "She's grown attached to you, to Diana, to this strange life we've been living." "And you?" Michael asked directly, the question they'd been circling for weeks finally spoken aloud between them. "Where do you stand, Olivia?" The distance between them closed as Olivia took a deliberate step forward, physical movement mirroring her internal decision. "I stand with the man who protects what matters, who teaches my daughter violin, who cooks pasta from his grandmother's recipes," she answered, meeting his gaze directly. "If that man truly exists beyond these past weeks." Michael's hand reached for hers with uncharacteristic openness, the connection between them no longer hidden behind pretenses of obligation or necessity. "He exists," he promised with quiet certainty, "and he's discovering priorities beyond power and control that he never knew he wanted, until a 7-year-old girl stopped him from eating poisoned pasta." The transformation in Michael wasn't just personal, but reflected in his organization, his lieutenants noting how decisions now considered long-term stability over immediate profit. Weekly strategy meetings had shifted from territorial disputes to investment portfolios, legitimate business acquisitions, and charitable foundations that could eventually whitewash the Ferraro name. Chicago's underworld had already begun whispering about the changes, rivals misinterpreting Michael's evolution as weakness rather than strategic redirection. 3 attempted power plays had been decisively crushed in the past month, each response calculated to demonstrate that legitimate aspirations hadn't dulled his tactical edge or resolve. The penthouse had been redesigned with subtle considerations for a child's presence, a dedicated space for Penny's violin practice with perfect acoustics, bookcases filled with multilingual literature to nurture her gift, and security measures so seamlessly integrated that they provided protection without creating a visible prison. These modifications spoke louder than any verbal commitment about Michael's intentions for their future. Diana approached with professional discretion, maintaining appropriate distance while signaling that decisions needed to be made regarding the waiting aircraft. "The pilot needs to file a flight plan, sir," she reported, her expression carefully neutral despite the clearly personal conversation she was interrupting. "Tell him to stand down," Michael instructed after a moment of silent communication with Olivia, her slight nod confirming their shared decision. "We'll be returning to the city. Arrangements for the penthouse security upgrades should proceed as discussed." Penny stirred as the rising sun reached her face, blinking awake to find her mother and Michael standing together with clasped hands. Her sleepy smile suggested this development was neither surprising nor unwelcome to her observant eyes that had witnessed their connection forming long before either adult had acknowledged it. "Are we going home now?" she asked simply, childhood's directness cutting through adult complications to the heart of what mattered. The question hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning beyond its surface simplicity. Michael looked to Olivia, allowing her to answer a question that would define their path forward. The world they would build together would never be conventional, but it offered possibilities neither had dared imagine before fate intervened in an Italian restaurant on what should have been an ordinary Chicago evening. "Yes, sweetheart," Olivia confirmed, the decision feeling right despite all logic suggesting otherwise. "We're going home, together." Thank you all for following this story. If you're enjoying it, write in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video, as your support is important for me to continue creating content here.